I have journeyed back from the other... Wait, what am I trying to say? I have journeyed back to my humble abode to tell you the tales of my journey. Japan, land of the rising sun, a place where your favorite character probably has their own cafe, a place that not only has amazingly delicious food, but also has plastic food replicas that look just as good as the real thing. Drew and I recently got married, and we decided that our honeymoon was going to be at one of our dream places to visit, Japan. We spent a total of 14 days there, plus 2 travel days, so I'm not counting those. I'll be going over all the spots we visited. We visited a ton of popular spots like Shibuya Sky, Harajuku, Super Nintendo World, and so much more. If you stumbled in for the first time, I am Chloe of the Everhearth Inn, Every Adventurer's Online Tavern. Without further ado, let's get started with day 1. I'm just gonna blitz through day 1. That was our travel day. We had to get to the airport by like 3, and our flight was at 6. We might have gotten there a bit extra early, but it was our first time flying out of the country together, and we wanted to make sure everything went very smoothly. So we gave ourselves a good buffer of time at the airport. So our flight took off at 6 a.m. Eastern Time. We had a little layover in Minneapolis, and then we flew to Japan. We ended up getting in at, I think, like 5:30 or 6 p.m. After we got through customs and everything, we were exhausted. We went and checked into our first hotel, which was in the Ginza area of Tokyo, and we didn't really have much energy to do anything, so we just went to our first of many stops to a Japanese convenience store, Family Mart, and all I have is this photo, but I ended up getting a egg salad sandwich, and it had the crust cut off, and it was delicious. And after I ate that, I promptly fell asleep. Also, before I get started, I am going to apologize for my pronunciation of many of these words. Yeah, just apologizing ahead of time for that. Day 2 was our first full day in Japan, and we were very excited to explore. But first, we had to have some breakfast. So we had breakfast at our hotel, and it was the perfect start to our first full day in Tokyo. For the first part of our day, we were exploring the Ginza/Chuo City area, and we walked about 30 minutes to one of my favorite places that I was so excited to visit, the Pokemon Center, Tokyo DX. I had that written down as like one of the first things to schedule for the itinerary. That was something I was looking forward to so much. And it was amazing, just as amazing as I thought it was going to be. So I ended up getting a ton of stuff at the Pokemon Center. I got a lot of gifts for my sister because she also loves Pokemon. I got a lot of stuff for myself, of course. Okay, I got it. If you're interested, I do have an upcoming video where I will be going over everything I bought in Japan, including everything I bought at the Pokemon Center. So after we did some damage at the Pokemon Center, we went and explored Ginza. Ginza, I think, is a huge shopping area of Tokyo. At least there are a lot of luxury stores, but there are also a lot of specialty stores, including Itoya, which is a stationery store. I think it was like 6 or 7 stories tall. It was huge. There was a lot to take in. I had a lot of fun looking around there. They had a lot of options for like making a very specialty pen. They had a lot of stickers. They had a lot of leather goods. So after Itoya, we hopped over to another highly recommended spot to visit, which was Ginza 6. A huge shopping mall. It has hundreds of stores and, again, tons of luxury stores as well. So we looked around in a few of those stores. We didn't end up getting anything, but it was really cool, and I would highly recommend visiting if you're in the Chuo City, Ginza area of Tokyo. There's also a huge Uniqlo in the Ginza area that is highly recommended to go visit. When we went and visited, it was so busy. I was getting a little overwhelmed, so we only stayed in there for a little bit. I would recommend going when it opens. Hopefully it's a bit less busy, but if you like Uniqlo, it had so much stuff. Another really cool store we went to in the Chuo area was Muji, which is essentially a Japanese Japanese IKEA. They have a ton of stuff. They have food, they have furniture, they have skincare, stationery, like pretty much anything for apartment living. If you're starting out, you could get it at Muji. And that just about wraps up our Ginza shopping, which was one of my favorite things. So after we had done some after we had done sufficient shopping and exploring of the Ginza Chuo City area, we went to Akihabara, which is Electric Town. It is like anime otaku central. If you love anime, you will love Akihabara. When we first got to Akihabara, it was already dark out, so we were greeted with a huge neon sign street. It was so cool. It felt like we were in a like cyberpunk anime, I guess. we were in awe, to say the least. One of the first places we wanted to visit here was the Mandarake complex, which is a like 8-story building just with any possible anime thing that you could imagine. So if you're into anime in any way, shape, or form,
go to this place.
Because you will find something that you love, I promise you. And then next we went to a place around the corner called Super Potato. Around the corner means it could have meant a couple blocks. I don't remember how far it was. It was close. If you like retro games, I would highly recommend going here. They had a ton of consoles, a ton of older stuff. Most, if not all of the games were in Japanese, so you'd have to be able to understand Japanese to be able to play these games. But there was a lot of cool stuff. There was a lot of cool like figurines. I didn't end up getting anything there because I'm not like super into retro gaming, but it is definitely a really cool place to visit and just look at the stuff. One of the floors you could actually play video games, so that was super cool as well. Day 3, we went to 7-Eleven for a convenience store breakfast, which I might say is delicious. I will also be creating a video going over
everything
we ate in Japan. So if you want more details on that, go check out that video after you're done with this video. You have to watch the rest of this video first, or you're a stinky poopy head. I'm just kidding, I love you. Unless you're not subscribed, then you're a stinky poopy head. So after our breakfast, it was time to explore Shibuya. So we hopped on the train over to Shibuya. The first thing we went to explore was the Shibuya Scramble Crossing, which is the busiest crossing in Tokyo. From what I read, at its busiest time, it's estimated that around 1,000 to 2,500 people use the crosswalk every 2 minutes. And it is a scramble crossing, so you can cross from like any direction. So of course we had to cross the Shibuya Scramble. We didn't actually need to go anywhere on the other side. We're just like, we're gonna cross this. It's cool. And then we can say we did it. So after crossing the Shibuya Scramble, we did a bit of walking down the streets of Shibuya, checking out a couple of the stores. But what I was most excited for today was visiting the Harajuku area. The big touristy attraction to the Harajuku area is Takashita Street. I really hope I'm saying that right. It is extremely touristy. Honestly, I wasn't that big of a fan of it. I'm glad we walked down it, but it just had like a bunch of touristy souvenir shops. There was some food and stuff, but it wasn't anything that I would really want to do again. But if you're visiting the Harajuku area for the first time, I would recommend just walking down it to experience it. But I was super excited to visit the Harajuku area mainly for the fashion of Harajuku. I was on the hunt for some really cool clothes. One of the first places I wanted to visit, which is highly recommended for Harajuku fashion, is La Forêt. It is a huge mall, multiple stories of course, that has really cool like accessories, clothing. There's a lot of secondhand like designer stuff in there as well. So if you're into like thrifting things, That's another cool place to check out. And then for lunch, we went to the Pom Pom Purin Cafe, which is my favorite Hello Kitty character. It's a little pudding dog. Drew actually surprised me with this. I know with a lot of these character cafes, you have to get these reservations way ahead of time. For example, the Pokemon Center Cafe, which I did end up getting a reservation for, spoiler alert. We'll be talking about that soon. We did not need a reservation for Pom Pom Purin. We kind of just showed up. It was like, I think a 20-30 minute wait, nothing big. And then we went to the cafe. We got some delicious food, and that was it for Harajuku. So our plans for that night were to visit Golden Gai in Shinjuku. So the first stop that we had was visiting the Godzilla head, which is a Godzilla head that's on top of a hotel, and it lights up and it has like a laser beam that's gonna shoot out. That was super cool. But the main reason we were visiting Shinjuku was to go to Golden Gai, which is this set of 6 narrow alleyways that is just packed with tiny bars. I think there's like 300 small bars or something crazy like that. We went into a couple different bars, and fun fact, I ended up running into someone that my sister works with, which is just crazy. Like, how do you run into someone from the US in Tokyo that knows your sister? That's crazy. Anyway, for our next full day, we were on our way to Kappabashi Kitchen Tool Street, and I will get into what that means in a second. On our way to the train station, we passed by this really cool marching band. It was just a bunch of schools, I think. They were all amazing. They had some flag spinners in the front. They had really good marching bands. But then after we watched the marching band for a while, we headed to the train station. Now, if you are interested in cooking at all, as I am, I would highly recommend going to Kappabashi Kitchen Tool Street. Kitchen Tool Street is a street that just has like tons of shops that supply various restaurants, from what I understand. So they had cooking utensils, they had pots and pans, they had napkins, they had just anything you can imagine that has to do with cooking in these stores. But what I was specifically on the hunt for was the plastic food replica store, which if you have been to Japan or seen anything about some restaurants in Japan, you'll know that they frequently have these displays outside that have fake food that looks like what they actually sell. And the store we went to was one of the suppliers of these fake food items. So I picked up a few things from there. I would highly recommend setting aside at least a half a day to explore this street. There's so many unique shops. And then after we went through all of Kitchen Street, or most of Kitchen Street, we headed over to Asakusa, which is really close by. It was just a couple blocks away, to find some food. We went to this place called Asakusa Gyukatsu. I'm not sure if that was the actual name of the restaurant. Yes, it was. I'm sorry. We ended up waiting about an hour and 45 minutes in line, which was a lot, but the food was delicious, let me tell you. I don't think it was worth the hour and 45 minutes, maybe 45 minutes. But with a lot of places in Japan that are popular, you're going to be waiting a while in line if you don't show up right as they open. So that's just how it is sometimes. It honestly was delicious anyway. Very happy with that. Good end to the Kitchen Street saga. And then one of our last stops of the day was the Asakusa Don Quixote. If you don't know about Don Quixote, it is a gigantic department store, I guess. It just has like anything you could possibly need in it, and it is amazing. They have tons of like souvenirs and stuff. They have clothing, they have snacks, they have alcohol if you're into that, little character things, little doodads, little toys. And then on the top floors they have secondhand designer again, which is a common theme in Japan, if you're into that. Highly recommend going to Don Quixote and checking that out. Got a lot of stuff for myself, got a lot of gifts. Just would highly recommend visiting one of those on your trip to Japan. Day 5, aka the day we traveled to Kyoto. We got up relatively early today because we were going on our first Shinkansen, which, if you are not aware, the Shinkansen is a really, really fast train. It goes like 180 miles per hour. Super duper fast. I get really motion sick. The Shinkansen, almost zero motion sick. I don't think I got motion sick at all, but I did sleep a lot, so point is, almost no motion sickness. Anyway, we did the Shinkansen. I think the ride was like 2 hours and 15 minutes, and then we were in Kyoto. Once we got to Kyoto, we checked into our hotel. First thing we did was we got a little bit of snackies, and we went on a little walk near the Kama River. Our hotel was also near Pontocho Alley, so we had to go check that out. Pontocho Alley is a alley that has like a bunch of traditional buildings. It is really, really cute, and it's got a lot of restaurants. So we ended up eating there that night. A lot of these restaurants, they were really small, and they had these signs that said no recording, no cameras, no photos. So we couldn't really record in a lot of these smaller restaurants that we went into. But I can assure you, we had some of the most delicious sushi we have ever had in Pontocho Alley / Japan in general. But if you're looking for some really good sushi, head to Pontocho Alley. You'll probably need a reservation, so just keep that in mind. So for our first full day in Kyoto, we went to our first shrine, the Fushimi Inari Shrine. I really hope I'm saying that right. The Fushimi Inari Shrine is an important Shinto shrine in southern Kyoto. It is famous for its thousands of vermilion torii gates, which straddle a network of trails behind its main buildings. I haven't visited a ton of shrines, but out of all the shrines we visited, this one was probably my favorite. It was so unique to what I have ever experienced in my life. The vermilion torii gates were so cool. Like walking up the stairs through these just like this endless stream of gates. It was super cool and really, really a cool experience. So I didn't take a ton of footage here because I wanted to be respectful. After climbing a lot of stairs, we came across something called the Omokaru Ishi, which is essentially this like wishing stone, from what I understand. The English description of it said you think of a wish and then you go to pick up the stone. If the stone is lighter than you expect, then your wish will come true soon. If the stone is heavier than you expect, then your wish will not come true for longer than you expect. And then if you pick it up and it's about what you expect it to be, then your wish will come in a normal amount of time. So we tried that. Our conclusion was that the stone was about the weight that we expected it to be. So our wishes are going to come true in a normal, moderate amount of time. So we explored the shrine a bit more, and then we found that we had the option to hike about 40 minutes uphill to the top of the shrine. And after some convincing, Drew convinced me to do it because I was like,
I don't know about that.
I've got to tell you right now, this was probably the hardest walking day of our entire trip. Now, it could have been because it was like the first kind of difficult one. We had done a lot of walking before, but this was like uphill, upstairs. If you've ever done stair climbing before, then you know how it feels. So anyway, we made it to the top of the shrine. It was beautiful. It was worth it, guys. I would suggest doing it. Everything in our itinerary, pretty much, I would suggest doing. But this was a really, really cool shrine. When we visited, it was kind of midday. I would suggest going a lot earlier in the day because there was just a lot of people. Another thing I found that the higher we got on our 40-minute hike, the less people there were. So if you're interested in getting photos with the Vermilion Gates and you show up a bit later, just hike up the mountain. hike up about 30 minutes, then take some photos because you'll be okay at that point. Oh my god. This next part. So we had finished our visiting of the shrine and we had to kind of even out our karma by doing some gambling. Just kidding. Well, kind of. We stumbled upon this place called Round One, which it's honestly a fever dream in there. It was described as like an entertainment center. So basically the first floor were these crane games. The crane games were the main reason that we went here because I was on the hunt for this Drifloon plushie. It was not at the Pokemon Center. I couldn't find it there, but it was like exclusive to these crane games. And I'm sorry that I didn't get any recordings of this because I was just like locked in when I was trying to get this thing. I ended up spending like, sadly, like 50 or 60 US dollars on trying to get this Drifloon. And I, alas, did not get the Drifloon. I'm very sad. Don't gamble, guys. I would suggest trying out the crane games, but give yourself a limit. Like, have 1,000 yen. You're just gonna do 1,000 yen to try to win the Drifloon. If that fails, you're done. Don't do what I did and just be like, oh, what's another couple 200 yen, you know?
Don't do it.
Anyway, the next thing we were on the hunt for was some arcade games. So we went up a couple floors and Drew played this really cool racing game. Couldn't understand the storyline because everything was in Japanese. Hopefully the next time we visit Japan, we can read and speak a lot better than this time around. But anyway, he played this racing game. He did these like really hard levels. We think it was the hard levels. We couldn't read anything, but anyway, he did a really good job. He won all his races. So that was our definitely roller coaster of a day in Kyoto. Day 7. This was another full day in Kyoto. We had reservations for a samurai experience in the Nishiki market area. So this training was pretty cool. I think it was pretty much all tourists doing it, but basically we showed up. They taught us like some different samurai moves. We got to dress up in like, I don't know what the word for it is. I'll do a little research and put right here what that outfit is called. They taught us like this set of moves, and then Drew and I performed them in front of everybody. And we had our katanas, and we did our little move set with our instructor. And then after we learned all the samurai moves, we made our way to the museum portion of it, where they had this little tour and they taught us about samurai and like a bunch of the history of that. And then we also got to throw ninja stars, which, so we got to have a few kind of trial throws of the ninja stars, and then they let us know that we were going to have a little competition. Whoever could get the closest to the center in 3 tries got to have a free ninja star. I was like, bet. Okay. The first throw that I get hits dead bullseye. Straight in the center, okay? This was round 1 of 3. Bullseye. But then they continue with the other 2 rounds. 2 other people get close as well to the bullseye. So now I have to compete. I have to compete against 2 other people again, and I can't pull that out of my ass again. That was luck, okay? But then we had the competition. All 3 of us. I'm the first one up. I throw my ninja star. It ricochets off the wall. Doesn't even hit the target. So I did not get a free ninja star. I did not know I was going to have to compete for a ninja star after my first throw. So I used up all my luck. And that wrapped up the samurai experience. Would I recommend it? It was fun. It wasn't like, you know, change your life amazing, but it was really fun. So if you're in the area and you want to like do a cool experience like that and learn a couple things, I would suggest it. It was pretty fun dressing up and learning the move sets. So I would say yes, definitely try it out. The Samurai Museum was in the Nishiki Market, which was another stop on our itinerary. The Nishiki Market has a bunch of fresh and preserved food. We ended up going into a candy shop and getting a few things there. There was also a bunch of cookware here too. I didn't end up going into any of those shops because we had done Kitchen Street already. But if you're in Kyoto, I would say that this is a pretty good second best to Kitchen Street. And then we were very hungry for lunch. One of the main things we wanted to do was get ramen in Japan, of course. And this was our first stop on getting ramen. We went to Ichiran Ramen, which is a very, very popular chain in Japan. They basically served us tonkatsu ramen, and it was like a private little cubicle situation, which was super fun. Drew and I both sat by each other. We both got our tonkatsu ramen. I got a side of extra green onions, a lot of green onions. It was delicious. And I ate some really, really good ramen. Honestly, for a chain, it was so good, guys. And all the food we got in Japan was so good, okay? I don't think I had any bad food in Japan. And we didn't do a whole lot of research into food. We just walked into places and it's just good. And then for dinner, oh my God, guys, we got probably some of the most delicious food I have ever had in my entire life at a place called Kyoto no Yakiniku, which was this delicious Wagyu place. So we stopped by here. If you want a little details of that, check out the Eating Japan food video. Delicious. And then that wraps up our second full day in Kyoto. Next day, I know I'm saying this a lot, but this was one of my favorite days in Japan. It was so fun. Oh, we went to Arashiyama, which has the famous bamboo grove, bamboo forest, and also Monkey Mountain. I don't think it's called Monkey Mountain, it's called Monkey Park. Good day, let me tell you. So, started off, got off the train in Arashiyama. First thing I see, a lid, a manhole sewer lid with Ho-Oh on it, a Pokemon. I'm like, what the heck is this? Pokelids. Didn't know that was a thing. Apparently there are tons of these Pokelids all throughout Japan. They're just different really cute manhole covers. And we already figured out from walking around quite a bit that Japan has really cute manhole covers. So I saw this, I'm like,
is this a thing in Arashiyama?
And we looked it up and it's just throughout Japan. So then that was another thing I had to worry about for the rest of our stay is where are the Pokelids? Anyway, that was the first part of the day, already starting out 10 out of 10. Then we made our way to Arashiyama, which was a really cute little town. There was a ton of really cute shops, a ton of really cute bakeries, ice cream stands, stuff like that. So we walked around town for a bit and we found this place called Miffy Sakura Bakery. I was initially drawn to it because it had this bunny head made out of bread on their sign. It was super cute. So that drew us in. So then after we walked around a bit, we made our way to the Bamboo Grove, which is a really beautiful forest of super tall bamboo. It's just bamboo everywhere. And we had passed by a few places that had bamboo on our walk, the Fushimi Inari shrine at one point had this little small bamboo grove, but this one was gigantic. Definitely worth it if you're going to Arashiyama or if you're in the area, you gotta go to the bamboo grove. So that was our main plan for the day. But when we were walking around, we saw a sign for a monkey park. And we were like, oh my gosh, a monkey park, that's pretty cool. So it was a hike up the mountain. Wasn't as steep as the Fushimi Inari shrine. It was steep nonetheless. Definitely had to take a few breaks. So we hiked up the mountain. They were warning us about the monkeys. They're like, don't look them in the eye. Don't point your camera at them. They see it as a threat. I'm like, I will not be doing that. I do not want to get attacked by a monkey. But they said, like, in general, they're fine. They're not aggressive unless you taunt them. So just don't be stupid. So we made it to the top of this mountain. There were monkeys everywhere. Surprise. And I think that they were all wild monkeys. They had a bunch of people, like nature people. What would be the word for that? They had a bunch of staff that were making sure that the monkeys were behaving. Like if they were displaying any sort of aggression, the staff would come up and be like, kind of tell the monkey to stop. But it was super cute. There were a bunch of monkeys just sitting around. They would walk right by. Like I didn't walk up to any monkeys, but a lot of monkeys walked up to me. There was also an option to feed the monkeys, but you had to go into this like gated area. And you had two options. You could either feed them peanuts or apples. Obviously, I chose apples because I'm allergic to peanuts. So we got 2 bags of apples and we fed the monkeys. And it was so interesting, like the way that they would like grab the food. Their hands felt like human hands, but small. It was really weird, guys. But it was really cool. I would highly recommend doing that. Honestly, this trip, like, to Arashiyama, there was so much stuff going on. It was beautiful too, like the walk to the town. Highly recommend this trip. After we had experienced the monkeys, we walked back down the hill. There was a beautiful walk over a bridge. We got to see some ducks and some turtles. And then that about wrapped up our day. Wait! I forgot one thing. So after we trained back to Arashiyama, did a little Google search for Pokelids, of course. There was one Pokelid. It was a 20-minute walk from our hotel. So we went on a little nighttime walk. We saw some kitties. We walked through this shrine that was really pretty. And we found the Pokelid. So these next couple days, I am going to skip over. We didn't really record because this was like our spa day, like halfway through spa day, and we just needed to chill. Day 9, stayed at the Ryokan, had some delicious food. Highly recommend doing a Ryokan on your Japan trip. Halfway through, I would say, because then you get some relaxation time. Day 10, we explored the onsen town a bit, and then we traveled back to Osaka, which is our next stop of our Japan trip. Our day 11 was a Super Nintendo World Day / Universal. We arrived at Universal, and the first thing we did was we got the toad mushroom hats. Highly recommend getting a little hat for the experience. There were not a ton of gaijin there. Gaijin? How do you say that? There were not a ton of foreigners there, so we kind of stood out with our toad hats. Everybody was like, oh, nice hat. And I was like, thanks. The Universal area was very much based off of different areas in the US. So there was like a New York, there was a Hollywood, I think there was a San Diego. There was a lot of like different big city recreations there. We basically just ate a bunch of food. There was also a lot of performers. That was fun to see. And like I mentioned before, I do get motion sick. So the only ride we ended up doing was the Jaws ride, which did not realize upon getting on the ride that it was a sort of like guided tour completely in Japanese. So we didn't really know what was going on. We just were having fun. They would say something and then the group of people would start doing something. We'd be like, yeah, woo. We would just copy everybody essentially because we had no idea what she was saying. But it was really fun. The Jaws ride, highly recommend. It was very cool. And then we made our way to Harry Potter World. I thought that you needed to have an additional ticket to be able to get into Harry Potter World, but we walked over there just for the heck of it, and we were able to just walk right in. So we were like, heck yeah, we explored Harry Potter World, got some butter beer as you do. I saw a real life hippogriff, so that was really awesome. And then after exploring that for a while, we went to Super Nintendo World. So Super Nintendo World is very popular. It was hard to get a ticket. We had to buy a timed ticket on a travel agent site called Klook. They didn't have any tickets available on the Super Nintendo store. Because we only had a couple days in Osaka, we didn't have very many options. So we got these tickets, and I was very happy because then we made our way to Super Nintendo World. Super Nintendo World was the main reason for our visit to Universal, and I was actually able to ride all of the rides in Super Nintendo World, not to brag. The Super Mario ride, I would say, was the most adventurous ride I've ever done. There was some spinning, there was a lot of movement, but I did not get motion sick. It was short enough that it was not an issue, and it was not intense enough that it was an issue either. But the Mario Kart ride was super cool. That one, honestly, was the best of the rides. The other ride was the Yoshi ride. It was basically like a really slow roller coaster that just kind of goes over Super Nintendo World and you can just see everything. It was a very anticlimactic ride. I mean, if you're going to Universal for Super Nintendo World, I would suggest doing both of the rides. One of the things that we had to do while we were there was get the little wristband things, which I'm kind of annoyed that they were so expensive. I think they were like, for both of them, I think it was like $90. Drew and I both got one. But in order to interact with a lot of the stuff in Super Nintendo World, you had to have that bracelet. So we got it. And then we were able to use the bracelet to like interact with the little question mark blocks. We could punch those. There was a bunch of other things that were interactable, like in the line for the rides. But one of the coolest things is if you had the Universal Japan app, there was a Super Nintendo World section where you could basically get a bunch of achievements. You could see how many coins you got from the question mark blocks. But there was also a quest where you had to basically save a golden mushroom, I think it was, by finding 3 different keys throughout Super Nintendo World. And these keys were at different stations, but you would play these mini games and then you would get a key at the end of it. And the thing with the keys is once you got all 3, you unlocked a super secret special ride, which was Bowser Jr.'s something. I don't know. I don't remember. I'm sorry. But it was a Bowser Jr. ride, and then you could go in, you could do the ride, and you completed the quest and saved the day. And so that was really fun. Unfortunately, the bracelets are expensive, and on top of like paying for a Universal ticket and a timed entry ticket to Super Nintendo World, it kind of felt like a lot. If you're a fan of Nintendo, I would definitely visit. And if you're a fan of theme parks, I would definitely visit. Now, the bracelets, were they worth it? Yes. Unfortunately, they were worth it. It made it a lot more fun being able to like interact with the Super Nintendo World, like doodads and things going on. It was really fun. So if you're spending like any good amount of time in Super Nintendo World, then I would suggest getting the bracelets. And I guess a bonus is if you ever decide to go back, because they are opening up a new section of it. I don't know what it's called, but it does have a Donkey Kong ride. If you're going to go back for something like that, you could bring the bracelets again and use the bracelets again. So we plan on potentially visiting Japan again, and hopefully, fingers crossed, it's open by then. I would assume, because it's going to be at least a year before we go back. And then that was pretty much the end of the day. When we left Universal, it was dark. We pretty much made our way back to the hotel, and then that was it for the night. Day 12 was a wandering Osaka day. The first place we wanted to visit was the Osaka Castle, and I do not know why. I did not get a lot of video of this. We were pretty tired from our walking the previous day in Universal, so we didn't really explore the grounds very much, but we did go to the actual castle because there was like 5 floors of museum stuff. So we visited each floor, we read about the castle, learned a lot, and then we ended up making it to the top. We could see all of the grounds. It was beautiful. I would recommend going, but if you don't appreciate history of Japan, the actual museum might not be as interesting. I thought it was interesting. There was a lot of reading, but everything had English options to read. A lot of really cool art. A lot to see on every single floor. It was really cool. Next stop for our Osaka exploring day was Amerikamura, or Amerikamura, which is a loosely Western themed area of Osaka. Apparently there's a lot of Western fashion there, and we saw like a lot of common stores that you see in America. Another thing that was really common in Amerikamura was secondhand stores with American fashions. There's like a lot of Carhartt, Polo Ralph Lauren, just a lot of stuff that you'd expect like American people to wear. It really reminded me of good American thrift stores. A lot of those more curated thrift stores, not so much Goodwill. There was just tons of these shops, tons of these secondhand stores. If you're going to be in Osaka and not in Tokyo, I think that Amerikamura is a really cool place to go if you're looking for that Harajuku vibes. We did also have some of the best takoyaki of the trip at a place called Kogaryu. Basically, we noticed that everybody had takoyaki, and we're like,
There's gotta be a good place around here somewhere.
so we looked it up, and Reddit told me that this place has like some of the best takoyaki they'd ever had. So we got it. It was some of the best takoyaki I've ever had. Our hotel was near Dotonbori, which is a like string of a bunch of like street vendors and stuff. We did end up having dinner there. It was an interesting experience. There were a lot of animatronics. Some people may like that. I was a little scared by some of them, but it was cool. And there was really good street food. And that about ends our second day in Osaka. So for day 13, we were headed back to Tokyo. However, before leaving Osaka, we had to go to one of the places I was the most excited to visit, which was the Pokemon Cafe. Now, I did visit the Pokemon Center in Tokyo, which does have a Pokemon Cafe, but I was unable to get a reservation here. This is probably the hardest reservation I have ever had to get. I will tell you about it. So the reservations open 31 days before the date of the reservation at 6 p.m. Japan time, which is, in my case, 4 a.m. I tried multiple times to get the reservation for the Tokyo one, but I failed several times because the tickets would sell out. I would have the page open and I would go to click on the time immediately as when the clock turned, and all the times would be taken, or it would tell me that the site was like busy, and then I'd refresh and then all the times would be gone. So I did quite a bit of research, and Osaka also had a Pokemon Cafe. To my knowledge, there's only one in Osaka and Tokyo, so I had a very limited time frame to be able to get these reservations. Third time, apparently, was the charm, because I was able to get a reservation at the Osaka Cafe after doing a lot of research on how to do it. Successful reservation. If you're interested in how I did that, I could make like a TikTok or something talking about how I got the reservation. Just let me know in the comments. This cafe was like everything I had hoped and dreamed. I was very happy with everything that we got. The food was super cute. It tasted pretty good too. We got to see Chef Pikachu as well, so all is good in the world, okay? And then that was about it for our last day in Osaka, because we took the Shinkansen over to Tokyo. So for day 14, we were back in Tokyo, and we had tickets to go to TeamLab Planets. TeamLab Planets is a sensory immersive art museum. You may have seen some things about it on social media. It is pretty popular. It starts by you have to take off your shoes. You take off your shoes, you put them in a locker, socks too, and then you're off to the first exhibit. The first part of the walk is this like uphill climb through like running water. It smells like lemons, so I have a feeling that it was there to clean your feet. But the first like real exhibit that I know was an exhibit was this light exhibit. It was crazy, and I don't remember the names of any of these like exhibits specifically, so I'll just explain them. This room just full of these string lights coming down from the ceiling, and then the bottom of the floor was a mirror, so it just looked like infinite light coming from everywhere, and you would just feel like everything was right in the world. Everything was just beautiful and amazing. That's how I felt, at least. But it was super cool and a really good first exhibit. So the second exhibit, from the knees down, you were immersed in water, and there was a projection of these fish on the water. And I at first thought the fish were it was just like a recording of these fish swimming around. But after exiting the exhibit, there was a little explanation on the wall that it was actually a program that was running that where if you would get close to the fish, they would try to swim away, or they would like burst into these like pink petals. And I wish I would have realized that while I was in the exhibit. I didn't realize it until I had left that it was kind of a program thing and unique to every person that was in the exhibit. And the third exhibit was this dome with a projection of like flowers falling down. And what you were supposed to do was go lay in like as close as you could to the center and just look up, and it looks like these flowers are falling on you. So that's what we did. I got dizzy really fast, so we did not stay in there for very long because my motion sickness was like...
I think we're done here.
It was very cool, but because I couldn't stay in there as long as I wanted to, it was probably my least favorite out of all the exhibits. The fourth room, I think this was the fourth room, it was this room full of these like colorful balls. I don't think they moved around at all. I didn't move any personally. I didn't see anybody else moving them, but you could like shimmy through them and like you could kind of pretend you were holding them up. Drew and I pretended that we were holding up the earth with the balls, and it was really cool. I liked that exhibit. And then the fifth one was the room full of orchids. It was just these strings of orchids coming down from the ceiling that would rise up slowly if you would walk towards them. So you would slowly walk towards them and they would start to like make a path for you. And you weren't supposed to touch the orchids or anything. So Drew and I kind of laid on the ground and we just looked up at the orchids, and it was really beautiful. I stood in the orchids a little bit too. It was like you're just surrounded by flowers. I loved it so much. I just loved all the colors. I love plants in general, so it was just like a really cool experience. I really liked that exhibit. And then the last exhibit was a bunch of like silver rock egg things where if you would touch them or push them, then they would make like a noise. So you'd be able to hear like these chimes going on in the background as you would press them. So that was really cool too, and that was the last out of all the exhibits. My favorites had to be the orchids and the rainbow lights hanging from the ceiling. Those are my favorite ones. Loved that. Other than that, our day 14, we went and got some sushi, and then we kind of made our way back, and that was about it for the day. Day 15, which is our last full day in Japan, sad, we went to Shibuya Sky. Now, you had to buy tickets for Shibuya Sky ahead of time. Like, you couldn't really get them day of. We tried to do that when we were in Tokyo for the first time, but they were sold out. So we had to go online and order a ticket for several days in advance. The problem with that is you don't know what the weather is going to be. You go up to the 46th floor of this building and you can look out on Tokyo. Day 15, wake up, it's gray, it's rainy, very sad, but wait, just wait. So we made our way to Shibuya Sky because we had the tickets. We might as well do it and see what it's like. So we went up to the top, and they informed us that the outside deck area was closed off due to the weather, so we weren't able to go out there. But we could see quite a bit of Tokyo. We even saw the Shibuya Scramble Crossing. We could see pretty much everything we wanted to see, and it was just a little gloomy. We looked around for a while in the windows. It was really cool. And then we got some food to eat, and while we were eating lunch, they announced the weather was getting better, so they were opening up the outside area. So everybody started rushing to get there. But we finished our food, and then we went to go get in line because they weren't just letting everybody go in at once. Like, you had to wait for people to exit, and then you could go in. It ended up getting pretty clear, so we ended up getting really, really lucky. We could see pretty much everything except for Mount Fuji, which is fine. Mount Fuji is, I guess it's very rare that you get to see Mount Fuji unless you're you know, it's a really clear day or a certain time of the year. So we weren't like going to see Mount Fuji. Like, we didn't go to Shibuya Sky to see Mount Fuji. It would have been a nice thing, but we didn't see it. It was a really cool thing. I would definitely recommend doing that. And then the rest of our day was kind of just going back to some places that we had been before. We explored more of the Shibuya area since that's where we were. And then we made our way back to Harajuku and we got some dinner, explored a bit more of the shopping. And then that kind of wrapped up our last day. For day 16, our flight was a bit later in the day, but we kind of just relaxed. We got some really good sushi. I think about mid-afternoon, we started making our way to the airport, got on our plane, and guess what? We saw Mount Fuji for about 5 minutes on the plane before it got too dark to see. It was the only time we saw it the whole time we were there. We were like, yes, thank you so much. We will see you again, Mr. Mount Fuji, or Miss Mount Fuji, if you are a gendered mountain. That was like a beautiful end to our trip. This was our honeymoon, so we really wanted to make this like a really good trip. So I did put a lot of time and energy into making this itinerary, and I think honestly it was a really good itinerary. Everything we did was interesting. Highly would recommend. We had tons of really good food, tons of really cool shopping, tons of really cool sights and sceneries, and this was by far my favorite trip I have ever been on. I knew that I was going to enjoy Japan when we went to visit, but I did not realize how much I was going to enjoy Japan. There's a lot of stuff that we didn't end up doing that just did not fit into our schedule. So I am dreaming of the day that we can go back to Japan and go to all those places that we weren't able to visit. If you have ever been to Japan or have some really cool spots that you know of in Japan, please let me know in the comments below. I'm curious what you would be interested to visit or what you visited before. If you liked this video, I do have another vlog style video where we went to C2E2. You can also check us out at Everhearth Inn on Instagram, TikTok. We have a Patreon. If you want to support us over there, you get early access to videos. Like I said, there will be a video where I go over all the food we ate in Japan, and then also another one where I go over everything we bought in Japan. So I'm very excited for those as well. Keep an eye out. And I will see you after your next quest, adventurer.